Hello and welcome to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Josh Shepherdson at BChad50. And as we've seen on a lot of Mondays, we've got a short slate today, only 7 games. But fortunately, as we seem to be alternating days here, good pitching on the mound again, as we did a couple days ago. And then I guess that means that tomorrow's back to all the scrubs, the 3s and 4s.
Haven't looked yet, but judging by the way the things have been shaping up lately, that feels like a pretty good guess.
Yeah, so either way, starting at the top here today, it's really a tale of two options for you if you're paying up in your cash games. You've got Chris Sale against the Angels. It's $11,100, and not as big as a favorite as you'd like him to be, for a guy you're paying $11,000 for. Minus 131 favorite, 7-run total. Obviously, 7-run total is nice, but there's almost every single game actually tonight is a 7-run total. 7 or 7.5, all but one. And so he's a nice option, and then below him, you've got Johnny Cueto, now up to a minus 220 favorite. All the money keeps coming in on his way. Also a 7-run total. So, you look at it as, are you searching for the higher upside with the strikeouts with Chris Sale? Or are you searching for, maybe innings, better chance at the win with Johnny Cueto? I tend to side on the side of Chris Sale because he does have the much higher strikeout rate, 32.1%. Johnny Cueto this year only 22.6%. Obviously, still a more than adequate pitcher, a very good pitcher, in fact. But, for me, 10% higher strikeout rate, I tend to think that's going to give me 3 to 4 more strikeouts Sale's way. Maybe they each give up a couple runs, but I think they have a similar floor. They both have a similar floor, but I'm taking the higher upside with Sale tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you. One other deciding factor for me is current form of the teams that they're facing. The Tigers haven't exactly been world beaters, but over the last 2 weeks, they rank 15th in WRC plus with a 102 mark again over that time frame. Conversely, the Angels check in ranked 29th with just a 68 WRC plus. They are scuffling of late, and the White Sox offense has really picked it up. They're sporting a 132 WRC plus in that time frame. They're at home. They got some hot bats. They're facing a fly ball pitcher at home run friendly U.S. Cellular Field. So I do think you're going to at least see a ball reach the seats off of Shoemaker tonight. And if a couple do, we know that Sale doesn't need a heck of a lot of run support to deliver a W. Maybe he has recently, but let's get beyond a couple messy starts. Still has a great strikeout rate during that time frame. Still has a low walk rate. Looks like he's just been kind of killed by some unfavorable light being shined on him by the BAPIP gods. But I like Sale tonight. I don't think that Cueto's a bad pick. I think you're going to see a pretty even split between ownership on the two in cash games, but I like the elevated floor due to Sale strikeouts more than I like the elevated floor of Cueto due to the higher money line favorite status. But they're clearly your top 2 horses in cash games. In GPPs, I don't mind spinning down to $7,800 John Neese. Yep. He gives you a ton of salary relief from both of the top 2 options. He is also a big betting favorite against a Rockies team that is just dreadful on the road. The worst offense in baseball on the road. Neese checks in as a minus 170 favorite according to Pinnacle. So pretty good shot at him getting a win. Might have a little bit more strikeout upside than usual because the Rockies are so bad against lefties and so bad on the road. And I misspoke. They're not the worst offense on the road. 87 WRC plus. They rank 23rd, but they are the worst offense in baseball against left-handed pitching. Checking in with a really ugly 61 WRC plus and a 24.3% strikeout rate. So Neese is a really nice option, I think, in GPPs, and he's been pitching well of late. But there's a couple other GPP names that you like. Who else are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on Neese. I think he'll be a popular play in tournaments, which is good, but you want to find guys that are a little bit cheaper. And, for those reasons, one guy that is a good pitcher, and you'll see as we go through the positions that I'm targeting a couple guys against him because his splits are just insane. I mean, he's terrible against lefties, great against righties. Robbie De La Rosa facing the Phillies. The Phillies have been a pretty hot offense. It's the highest total on the night in Arizona. But we've seen De La Rosa, we've seen his upside. Went 8 innings 3 starts ago against Milwaukee. Had a couple really good starts against the Padres and Giants in his last 10. So he's a guy that's more than capable of putting up big numbers. And I think a lot of people will be on Philly bats and that game. And so for that reason, I think he's going to be a really low-owned tournament and very risky play. But he could pay off in a big-time way at a really low ownership tonight.
Yeah, and he has a nice strikeout rate for the year. You got to like the fact that he can miss some bats, misses more bats than Nice, so that gives him a little bit of an edge there as
Yeah.
well. So, I think he's going to be low owned. I don't mind that play, and I guess probably should mention it. Mentioning these guys as GPP plays, we're not saying not to play Sale or Cueto though.
No.
They certainly are obviously in playing GPPs as well. Just noting that they are basically your only two cash games options. If you're veering from them, I would say that's probably a pretty terrible decision. Even with Nice likely to get the win, I just there's not enough big totals, not enough big bats to make up for the difference in talent between Nice, Cueto, and Sale. So just to clarify, I guess a little bit, I think Sale makes for a strong GPP play for the same reasons we like him for cash games. Big ceiling, but also that elevated floor. But getting the train back on the tracks. One other name I'm looking at in GPPs is Ian Kennedy. He's backed by an offense which has not been good, but the Reds haven't been very good either. Over the last 14 days, they're basically bottom, not quite five, but bottom five offense in baseball in WRC plus, 77, 21.7% strikeout rate. You extend that to over the last 30 days, and they're bottom half of the league as well. And even on the year, they haven't been a potent offense. You get them out of Great American Ballpark. It's a pretty good scenario to get them in. We know Kennedy's biggest problem is with home runs. At least he's at Petco. The ball has been carrying out a little bit more there this year, but you still prefer that to him at most road venues. And he's got some decent numbers this year. You throw out the home run issues, and we're looking at a 3.86 xFIP. He avoids the long ball tonight. You got to like the 21.7% strikeout rate, and you got to like matchup with a scuffling offense. So I do think he's in play in GPPs as well.
Yeah, I'm completely with you there, and I think he's another one of those options that just doesn't look like he has a lot of upside. But as you mentioned, I mean, in Petco Park, an offense that's really struggling, he certainly could get it done. And then if you want your ultimate contrarian play, weigh in Chen against Seattle. As a team, they're not very good against lefties. Obviously, one certain outfielder, actually two outfielders, but one in particular, just absolutely destroys left-handed pitching. But you can navigate him. He's a solid above-average pitcher if he keeps the ball in the ballpark. So he's a guy that will be very low owned. I think I'll throw in one or two tournament lineups tonight.
Yep, and like you said, he's pitched well, and he's another guy that, he's kind of the opposite Ian Kennedy, where his ERA has been good because he has limited the home runs. If he can continue to limit home runs, the other underlying stats are pretty decent. So avoid the long ball, avoid the damage from that certain outfielder, and I'd say he's in pretty good shape.
Yep, absolutely. Moving on here to catcher. As we're looking at cash games, I know you and I both like another Seattle bat, actually, Jesus Montero. He's near minimum salary, $2,300. Hit a homer again yesterday. I won't say last night. I guess it was yesterday afternoon. But he's been hitting the ball pretty well, making good contact. He's near minimum salary. Makes a lot of sense if you're paying for one of those top two arms because you want some other big bats. And there's really no one at catcher you want to pay up for. There's no Buster Posey. There's no Yasmani Grandal is hitting from the right side of plate against the lefties, so that's the opposite side of what you'd be normally paying for him. Victor Martinez gets Johnny Cueto. So for me, that's the guy I'm going with in cash games. I do like V-Mart in tournaments, despite the fact that he's been better against lefties than righties, and Cueto's been better against lefties than righties. All the factors kind of going against him, except that he's a proven hitter for under $2,900.
Yep. I think that's a strong assessment, and he's going to be low owned because of that matchup. You're going to see Cueto pretty popular in GPPs, and we obviously aim for low ownership. If you can get some points out of that, going to give you an edge. I like Matt Wieters at 2,600 against Vidal Nuno. Again, these are more or less GPP plays because I'm locking in Jesus Montero at 23 in cash games. He's raked against left-handed pitching in the minors, raked against it in the big leagues, and he's carried his hot bat from the minors to the big. So I'm all over him in cash games, but I think Wieters is a good dice roll in GPPs. And then if you want to get kind of crazy, $3,500 Wellington Castillo. Price point's going to turn some people off. He's not facing a left-handed pitcher, which is going to turn people off, but he is at Chase Field, and his power plays really well there. He's got 14 home runs on the year, kind of an all-or-nothing hitter. He doesn't possess a lot of patience, but if he gets into one, and Aaron Harang isn't exactly a big bat-missing pitcher who you have to worry about striking out Castillo a ton. He makes a lot of sense to give you some edge because you're looking for if you're going to go away from saving money at the position, you're going to be looking for power, and Castillo certainly possesses that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that kind of ties us in with first base, where your chalk plays Paul Goldschmidt, and you tend to think that Castillo likely going to bat 1 to 2 spots behind Goldschmidt. So, pairing those two together, not a bad option. And Goldschmidt's price continues to drop despite 2 3-hit games in his last 4 outings. I mean, he's still arguably the best hitter in all of baseball at first base. I think he is right now, at least. Abreu's probably pretty close, but overall for the season, he's the best hitter at first base, one of the best overall hitters. He's $3,700, going to be a very popular play, but for that reason, you want to look elsewhere in tournaments. So I'll give one guy I'm looking at, Ryan Howard, lefty against Ruby De La Rosa, probably my favorite tournament play. And then I know there's a swerve that's the other direction, more expensive, that you like.
Yeah, it's going to pain me to probably go off of him in cash games just because Goldschmidt's going to be so high owned, and it's just a bargain at $3,700. But $4,500 Jose Abreu is absolutely on fire right now, and I mean, he's my pick for Dong of the day. He's facing fly ball pitcher Matt Shoemaker at the Cell. He's hit 7 home runs over the last 30 days. He's looking like last year's AL Rookie of the Year, Jose Abreu, all over again. And the matchup's right at $4,500, a steep $800 price increase from the chalk. I think he's going to be fairly high owned, but not as high owned as he should be. Yep. Just because you can get that steep discount with Goldschmidt, because there are 2 very expensive pitchers that people are going to want on a roster. Those things are going to play into depressing Abreu's ownership a little bit. Another name I like is actually at the exact same price point as Paul Goldschmidt. Joey Votto, $3,700. He holds a platoon advantage over Ian Kennedy, who has allowed a sizable 335 WOBA to left-handed batter since 2013. So that's a nice little, I guess you could call it a pivot off of Goldschmidt at the exact same price point. And then your secondary chalk, you and I are both in agreement. You're going to see some people chasing Ryan Zimmerman's 2 home run day. He gets a lefty again tonight. He's just $2,700. So if this turns into a position where people want to save some money at, maybe they just don't have that extra $1,000 for Goldschmidt because they're going to pay $5,000 for a certain outfielder, then I think Ryan Zimmerman's going to have a fair amount of ownership as well. But he does make for a strong play against Brett Anderson.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And then one other guy that you actually mentioned for the show, always goes under-owned, as do the rest of the Kansas City Royals. Kendrys Morales is $3,200. Switch hitter, gets Matt Boyd tonight, who has not been good at all. 22 hits allowed already in his first 13 innings in the bigs this year. And we already saw that one huge implosion when he was pitching for Toronto. So, I mean, this is a guy that's very prone to giving up big runs, and as they always are, Royals going to be an interesting under-owned stack tonight.
Yeah, and Boyd just not a big bat misser. Even in his quality start against in his last quality start, which came against the Royals, only struck out 2 in 7 innings. If you're allowing that much contact, bad things do tend to eventually happen. So Morales, I do think, is an interesting under-owned option who will hold the platoon advantage as a switch hitter facing Matt Boyd.
Yep, and as we move here to second base, you and I are in agreement. There's a certain hitter who recently came off the DL, far too cheap, has the platoon advantage against Ruby De La Rosa, who struggles with lefties. Chase Utley, near minimum, $2,300. If you want to fit guys like Goldschmidt, Abreu, that outfitter we keep not mentioning, you're going to need to pay down somewhere. Second base makes sense because your expensive options aren't, I don't consider any of them really must plays. Ben Zobrist in a great spot against Matt Boyd, of course. But your hottest option at second base really is Ian Kinsler, but he gets Johnny Cueto, which makes him, obviously, at $4,100, a GPP option at best. And then another guy I like to play, Cesar Hernandez, but he's $3,300. For me, I'm playing his teammate for $1,000 cheaper, and then the only other guy I'm really considering paying up a little bit for would be Anthony Rendon.
Yeah, I mean, $2,900 is not a bad price point for Rendon. But assuming Chase Utley's back in the lineup after a day off yesterday, $2,300 Chase Utley's perfect for cash games. Not a bad GPP play either. Does hold that. We know that De La Rosa has a real struggles with left-handed batters, allowing a 380 WOBA to them since 2013. Beyond that, there are a couple other names that I'm looking at. One is Jonathan Scope. He's moved up to 6th in the lineup, or at least that's where he hit yesterday. Does have some big pop. Is getting a lefty. Hasn't hit lefties that well in the big leagues, but we are still talking about a pretty small sample size for a very young hitter. And Beyond that, Enrique Hernandez should be in the lineup tonight with Howie Kendrick suffering an injury yesterday. And he gets a lefty tonight. He gets Gio Gonzalez. Gio has been fairly giving to right-handed batters this year, so Kike Hernandez looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. And don't go chasing his power upside there. He has homered in 2 straight games, but this is a diminutive guy. He's not a guy that's going to hit a ton of home runs, but I mean, he has been hitting well. So I mean, at that price, he's certainly a guy that I'm considering if I'm not playing Utley, or for some reason Utley's not in the lineup. I'll probably just pivot up $100 to him.
Same.
Third base options. We both love Manny Machado against Vidal Nuno, but $4,200 going to be pretty tough to fit in cash games, and which makes him a really good tournament option. And then also Nolan Arenado, away from Coors Field, but he gets a lefty. John Neese, a ground ball pitcher, who's actually been pitching very well. But all those factors are going to kind of play into his low ownership tonight. So you know the kind of upside he has. He's going to be an interesting option. But third base pretty barren right now. I think you and I agree that if you go on middling option, you're going to go with the most talented middle option, and that's going to be Todd Frazier at $3,000. Hasn't been great, but did get, well, he didn't start yesterday. He didn't get the entire day off because he came in a pinch hit. But this is a guy who has been struggling since the All-Star break, but we know the kind of monster upside he has, and Ian Kennedy being home run prone. All it takes for Todd Frazier to pay off that way too cheap price tag is to get a hold of one off of Ian Kennedy, and I don't think that's too far-fetched of an option tonight.
No, and you got to really love that depressed price tag. Just $3,000 for a guy who has 27 home runs on the season, also stolen 10 bases, which is easy to overlook. Yeah. Big power, talented hitter, good lineup spot. I mean, no, he's not great at Great American Ballpark, but decent matchup against Ian Kennedy, who is not the toughest pitcher on right-handed batters. Since 2013, he's allowed a 330 WOBA to righties, so definitely can take advantage of that. And you're not missing out on much by using Frazier. I mean, you got to save money somewhere. Machado is the top play at the position tonight, but 4,200 is a little bit steep to get him away from Camden Yards at Safeco. So I'm with you. Machado, good GPP play. Arenado, good GPP play. But it's Frazier for cash games, and Frazier's a solid GPP option too, just because of that top shelf power.
Yeah, absolutely with you there. And so really, third base, if something opens up, you get a guy in a great lineup spot for cheap. You aren't a fan of Frazier, go ahead and do that, because like you said, I don't think there's going to be very much ownership for Manny Machado in cash games tonight with all these other big bats and pitchers you want to pay for. And another position like that, shortstop, you know the drill by now. When there aren't any elite options you feel the need to pay for, you just go ahead and go down to Alcides Escobar, leading off for the Royals, a team in a good matchup against Matt Boyd. They're expected to score some runs. He doesn't need to do much. What he's been doing the last couple of games is perfectly fine. He gets you 2 to 3 points, gets on base, scores a run, maybe swipes a bag if you're lucky, and that's perfectly acceptable. Plus, his ownership is going to be through the roof in cash games tonight. So, fading a really cheap guy like that, he doesn't really have home run upside, but you fade a really cheap guy like that, maybe he goes 3 for 5, swipes a bag, you're setting yourself behind pretty quickly at a pretty bad position.
Yeah, I mean, there's no Correa, there's no Tulo today, so really it's click and add Alcides Escobar in your cash games lineup. If he's not over 70% owned in cash games tonight, I would be shocked. Yep. He's at nearly the minimum price. He gets, as you said, the leadoff spot against a bad pitcher, and the 4-run over-under total for the Royals is one of the highest on the slate. There's only one that's higher, and that's the Diamondbacks at 4.5 runs. So he's in a good, favorable position. If you in tournaments, I don't mind pivoting off of him to J.J. Hardy at 2,300. Hardy gets a lefty tonight. He's not exactly putting up banner J.J. Hardy years type numbers, but 7 home runs does still illustrate that he has some pop in his bat. And then Ian Desmond also looks pretty good, 3,300. That price is going to deter some people from using him, as is his lineup spot. But he's got 12 home runs on the season. He hit one just a few games ago. And even though it's a down year for him, he does have more power upside than pretty much anybody else at the position tonight. But I know there's another name that you're looking at $2,500 that's fairly interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking at Eugenio Suarez. He's been the replacement for Zach Cozart, obviously, as you know, and the guy's been making good contact. I mean, you look at Each of his last 9 starts, there's the only game in his last 10 that he didn't have a hit was one that he just pinch hit. So, I mean, the guy puts the ball in play. He doesn't have a lot of power, but Petco Park's a big ballpark. You already mentioned Kennedy struggles against righties. Suarez, you assume, will probably bat 6th or 7th tonight, depending what the Reds do. But he's a guy that certainly has upside. And, I mean, even in the times when up, he's got a couple stolen bases as well. He's got 3. So, at $2,500, I'm not playing in my cash games, but he's a guy that's cheap that, if the Reds decide they're going to run wild on the base pass, which we've seen them do every once in a while, not much to lose there. So Suarez, a guy, maybe hits a gapper, gets a double, comes around and scores a run. You don't need much at $2,500 tonight.
Not at all.
All right, now the big moment you've all been waiting for that you already knew what was going to happen. Nelson Cruz against the lefty, Wei-Yin Chen tonight. He's obviously your top option, really at any position, as he usually is against an average to below average pitcher. And while I think Chen's a fine pitcher, not a guy that I'm avoiding with Nelson Cruz, who is just tearing the cover off the ball against anyone on the opposing side. So obviously he's your top option, and it's really not that close. Next up for me behind him that I like the most, considering price, is going to be Lorenzo Cain at $3,700. We know what he does against lefties. The guy does it all. I mean, you look at just his last 2 games, a perfect example of it. Last game, just 1 for 3, but he also walked and stole a base. Game before that, 2 hits. 1 was a double, 1 was a triple. He's got power. He's got speed. He's one of the better all-around players in baseball, and you can get him for $3,700.
Yeah, and he hits in a good lineup spot. He hits third. We expect the Royals to score some runs against Matt Boyd tonight. So $3,700, really good price point for owning Kane. In GPPs, I like David Peralta a bit against Aaron Harang, coming off of a 5-hit effort, which is might inflate his ownership just a touch, but at $3,500, he's priced around a bunch of studs. Can't imagine his ownership is going to be too crazy, but he is at Chase Field. It is a 4.5 run over/under total, highest on the board tonight, so you're going to want some pieces of that, and Peralta looks like a good one to me. Justin Upton at $3,100 looks really good against David Holmberg. Holmberg does not miss bats. Upton, another one of those do-it-all outfielders, hit a home run in his last game, also has 18 stolen bases on the year, so he is running. In that same game, I like Jay Bruce against Ian Kennedy. As we've noted a couple times in the show, Kennedy struggles with the long ball. Jay Bruce, that is his one calling card, is that power in his bat. So at $3,100, not a bad play in the outfield. I'll leave your boy for you at $3,000, and I'll move down the list a little bit. $2,800 Scott Van Slyke I like a bit against Gio Gonzalez. Not exactly doing Scott Van Slyke things yet this year, but does have a nice track record of mashing against lefties. I do think the price point's going to turn some people off on him, but $2,800, it's affordable still, and I like the matchup with Gio quite a bit. And it is at home, where Dodger Stadium does enhance home run hitting. So I like him quite a bit. And then down in the bargain bin, got to like Jason Worth. I mean, maybe you don't have to like Jason Worth, but he's a minimum salary option. He's crushed lefties throughout his career. He did finally get on the board with a home run yesterday, his 3rd of the season. But really the first signs of life since his disabled list activation. So good to see him reach the seats. And at $2,200, good lineup spot, and a decent matchup. Brett Anderson doesn't exactly mow against right-handed batters. Not dreadful against them by any stretch, but can be giving it time. So I like Worth at $2,200. He gives you a lot of salary relief.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you there. He's a guy that is a great filler in your cash games, and I have him tentatively slotted into mine as well. There's actually 2 guys at $3,000 I like a lot. One, obviously one of my favorite young players, Dominic Brown. Dom Brown, $3K. We already mentioned Ruby De La Rosa struggles with lefties, and they are significant. Almost a 400 WOBA, 17 homers this year. Highest total on the night, yada, yada, whatever you want to hear here. Another guy at $3K, Adam Jones, gets a lefty, and Vidal Nuno at $3,000. Jones hasn't been particularly great recently, but we know what he's capable of against lefties. Tend to think he's going to have a decent amount of ownership tonight at that price. And then my favorite pricey GPP option, JD Martinez against Johnny Cueto. Cueto, very good pitcher, obviously, but he is better against lefties, and Martinez actually been better against righties this year. So take that for whatever you will. Certainly not a cash game play at that price at all, but definitely a guy I'll be getting some exposure to because Cueto does make the occasional mistake, and JD Martinez very rarely misses occasional mistakes, so I expect that he'll take one the other way if Cueto throws one over the plate, gives him a meatball. Yeah,
I mean, 30 home runs is certainly nothing to sneeze at, and he's also backed it with 20 doubles and a triple as well. So an extra base hits machine is JD Martinez, and you expect him to be fairly low owned because he is facing Cueto, and that kind of power at a low ownership can have some really beneficial results for rostering in GPPs.
Yep, I'll throw out one more guy, Mark Trumbo at $2,400. Another guy that hits
Yep.
lefties hard with big time power. For those reasons you just said. So that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.